Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the AKLF Tolly literary event. We're very, very happy that all of you have made it in the cold. AKLF and Tolly have been in partnership for the last 6 years, and over the years we've had some wonderful literary events. There will be no exception to this tonight. We have a very interesting topic given the situation that we have outside in the world. What's it called? Our two speakers today are Mr. Rajmohan Gandhi and Salil Tripathi. Rajmohan Gandhi is a biographer and historian and is a research professor at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, US. He led the Indian delegation at the United Nations Human Rights Commission, Geneva in 1990, and was resident editor Indian Express in Chennai in the 1980s. He has been active in the public life as a journalist, academic, and thinker. His latest work is a history of South India from the 17th century to our times. Earlier books by him include Prince of Gujarat and Understanding the Founding Fathers, both published by AKLF. His Mohandas is a biography of his grandfather, Mahatma Gandhi, and was awarded the Baj Pujari Biennial Award by the Indian History Congress in 2007. He has also written biographies of Sardar Patel, Frontier Gandhi Ghaffar Khan, C.R. Rajgopalachari, and a book on the founding fathers of India. Salil Tripathi is no stranger to us. He's been here before, but I'll just a little bit about him. He is a writer and an author based in London. Born in Bombay, he chairs PEN International Writers and Prison Committee. He has been a correspondent for Far Eastern Economic Review in Singapore and India Today. In Bombay, he has written for the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, etc. He is a contributing editor at Mint and The Caravan. In 2015, he received the Red Ink Award from the Mumbai Press Club for Human Rights Journalism. His other awards include the Bastiat Prize in New York and the Citibank Pan-Asian Journalism Award in Hong Kong. His books include Offense, The Hindu Case, The Colonel Who Would Not Repent, about the Bangladesh War, and its unquiet legacy and detours, Songs of the Open Road. AKLF will publish his next book on Gujaratis. Before I call on stage, Mr. Rajmohan Gandhi and Salil Tripathi, can I please ask Maina Bhagat, who very kindly has come here today. She's the director of AKLF, and we'll just ask her to say a few words, and then we will ask our two speakers to come on the stage. Maina, please.
May I speak from here?
Yeah.
Good. No, it's a bit difficult. Come. Yeah. Very. Yes. All right. Good evening, fellow Tollygunge members. And I speak here very briefly on behalf of the Apeejay Kolkata Literary Festival, which has been associated very happily with Tollygunge Club, and we have had the pleasure of bringing authors from across the globe to our session at Tolly, which means a lot to us. Thank you, Tollygunge Club, once again for hosting our very eminent delegates, Rajmohan Gandhiji and Salil, and this is the finale, the closing event of our 3-day festival, and I'm very, very happy that Tollygunge Club is a part of this. Thank you.
Can I ask Mr. Rajmohan Gandhi and Salil Tripathi to come on stage, please? Could you please switch off your mobile phones? Arundhati just now told me to tell people, and I just said, do people still need a reminder about switching off mobile phones for an event? She said yes. So please do that.
How do I start? Hello, can you hear me now? It's working now? Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Now I can also hear me. Yeah. Hello, good evening everyone, and it's always a pleasure to come to Kolkata, Calcutta, however you wish to pronounce it. We have a formidable topic, an extremely important topic, and totally wonderful person to discuss these ideas with. And the theme is Neta in the post-truth world, eyes wide shut. I was just asked by one of the journalists that why eyes wide shut? And the reason is, of course, that things are happening. We have our eyes open, but we are not seeing what is happening. And what is it that we are not seeing? And what is it that the post-truth world is doing to the whole notion of who a Neta is, who a leader is, what leadership means, what we expect from leaders, and what is the reality that they inhabit and in which they operate, and how they project themselves, and how we are receiving the images and what we do about it. And so much of the world today, while on one level is dictated by what we read and hear, but increasingly it is shaped by opinions that are molded and created through the electronic media, including the internet, through the memes, and creation of particular images of leaders and the way they are, and which may be quite at variance with what they actually are like. And this applies not just to the Netas of today, but also of yesterday. And this morning, those of you who were at the wonderful session on Gandhi that Ram Guha and Tridip Surud had done, would remember the conversation about the kind of reassessments that are going on and what are the motivations behind it, about how we look at the past. And so I wanted to, Rajmohanji, before we plunge really deep into the topic, as we were discussing yesterday, I wanted to talk about something that has gained currency in the last few years, particularly on the internet and even on some of the more underground sources, which was what happened at the time of the partition. At the time of the partition, the received wisdom that you hear now is that the nation actually wanted Sardar Patel, Vallabhbhai Patel, as the next prime minister, as the first prime minister of India. But Gandhi, who was not a Democrat, and he didn't listen to others, and he overruled everybody, and he decided that no, it will be Jawaharlal Nehru, and that's the decision he took. And we are suffering from the consequences of that. That's one of the wisdoms that we are getting. Your thoughts on that?
Hello, am I being heard? Yes. Before I respond to your question, may I also express my happiness at being with all of you? And I would just like to add one sentence. These days, I'm also known as the brother of Gopal Krishna Gandhi. And I'm very happy to be called that. Sometimes people mistake me for him, and I'm even happier when that happens. So, yes, I did write Vallabhbhai Patel's biography 30 years ago. It's a long book, and quite a few people have read it. It's still in print. It's fairly widely sold. It's not easily available, but it is there. And among the many questions that I researched for that big book was this question of the first Prime Minister of India. And as Salil points out, this is a widespread view today that Patel is what the people of India wanted, the Congress Party wanted. And day before yesterday, I was given the latest version of this current story. It went something like this, that provincial Congress committees in different parts of India were invited to send their nominations for the Prime Ministership of India. These were sent in sealed envelopes, and Gandhi opened these envelopes. Nehru was next to him, Patel was next to him, there were some other leaders present. Gandhi opened the envelopes one by one. 12 envelopes, when opened, said Sardar Patel should be the Prime Minister of India. 2 envelopes, when opened, said that Kripalani should be the Prime Minister of India. And there was no envelope that said that Nehru should be Prime Minister of India. And then Gandhi, being Gandhi, said to Vallabhbhai Patel, take back your name. He said to Kripalani, take back your name. And he said that I want Nehru to be the Prime Minister of India. And everybody agreed, and that's how Nehru became the Prime Minister of India. Now, this, of course, is a concocted story. But for concocted stories to have some staying power, they have to have a little basis in truth. And there is a tiny, tiny fragment of truth in this story. What happened was as follows. We're talking about a long time ago. Very few of you may be even aware of some of the things I'm going to mention. From 42 to 45, many of the Congress leaders were in prison following the Quit India movement that was launched in August of 42. Patel was the oldest Congress leader at this time. Gandhi was not in the Congress. Gandhi was older than Patel. Patel was 14 years older than Nehru. Patel had played a very leading part in the Quit India movement. All Patel, Nehru, Maulana Azad, various people were in prison. After 3 years, they were released in 45. And the war also was over. And in 45, 46, the Congress party, which had been banned during the Quit India movement, was unbanned. It was around again. And it had to elect a president of the Congress party. And in November, December of 45 and January, February of 46, nominations were invited from various provincial Congress committees for the next president of the Congress party. At that time, nobody knew whether India would be independent soon or not. Yes, the cabinet mission was to come, or it was cabinet mission came almost suddenly in February of 46. When the Congress president was being chosen, there was no idea even of the cabinet mission's visit to India. And most Congress leaders at this stage in different parts of India felt that Vallabhbhai Patel, being the oldest in age, not being well, quite ill, had been Congress president only once before in 1931. Jawaharlal Nehru had been Congress president in 29, 36, 37. Netaji Subhash Bose had been president in 38 and 39. Maulana Azad had been president from 40 to 46. And they felt that they should honor Vallabhbhai Patel's lifelong service and his immense role in the Quit India movement. And indeed, 12 Congress committees proposed his name, not in a secret envelope, but very publicly, for presidentship of the All India Congress. And it is absolutely true that Gandhiji felt that Nehru should be the next president. And indeed, he became the next president. And a year or so later, he became the first Prime Minister of India. Gandhi's feeling that Nehru should first become Congress president and then the Prime Minister of India was a feeling shared by the vast majority of the people of India at the time. If you go back to the newspapers or weeklies or magazines of that time, you will find not a single voice of unhappiness, regret, or protest that Nehru should become first Congress president, and afterwards, when he became Prime Minister in 47, there was no objection, no regret, no protest by anyone. If indeed this story had been true, that the people of India wanted Patel as the Prime Minister, and that Nehru was foisted on the Indian nation at the time by Gandhi, at least there would have been some complaint in some newspaper, some magazine, in some corner of India. Of course, there was no such thing. There was a huge public meeting in Bombay in 48 or 49. Nehru and Patel addressed it. And the American journalist Vincent Sheehan went to this meeting. After it was over, Nehru had left. Patel was still there, and Vincent Sheehan spoke to Patel and said, "What an amazing meeting this was, what a huge crowd." Vallabhbhai Patel told the reporter, "They come from Jawaharlal, not for me." Shortly before he died, Vallabhbhai Patel himself made a statement saying that he was ill by this time. He knew his end was not far, and he spoke of Gandhi's wish that Nehru should be the Prime Minister, and that Patel, of course, became Deputy Prime Minister. And Vallabhbhai Patel said that Gandhi's decision on this was absolutely right. Now, I tell this rather long story because Vallabhbhai Patel was a very remarkable man. His spirit of sacrifice was absolutely astounding. And his contribution to India's struggle for freedom, and afterwards, of course, the integration of the Indian states, is an immense story. But this notion that the people of India, the Congress party, the Congress, provincial Congress committees, wanted Sardar Patel to be the Prime Minister of India is an absolute canard. And I'm very glad that at least this group can be informed of the facts.
Can I just add a postscript to that? And this is what we were discussing yesterday. And this was Maniben Patel, who later became an MP for a short while, I think in the 70s, with Janata Party, and Sardar Patel's daughter. And she has repeated this story to other people, and I've heard it from people who have heard it from them, so it's not too far from the source, although it's been, at least a few steps removed, which is that when Patel was asked that, don't you feel upset over this selection? And he said in Gujarati, and I'll say what he said in Gujarati and then crudely translated it. He said, "Avat no mane nathi ranj ane nathi dunk." And essentially what it meant was, this doesn't cause any resentment in me, nor am I pained by that. And I think we need to bear that in mind when we think of what may have happened at that time, given that there are no other records. But we live in a world where these grains of reality, grains of truth that are known, are twisted to present leaders in a way that does an immense disservice to their reputations. Just in terms of, I'm skipping what I was going to talk about by coming straight to a very interesting phenomenon that we are seeing in India just now. That if we look at the pantheon of the leaders that the current government is celebrating, other than Savarkar and Deen Dayal Upadhyay, it is Bhagat Singh, it is Subhash Bose, it is Ambedkar, and it is Patel. And one would argue probably that if they were around today, they would be appalled by what has been going on in the country. And yet this appropriation has been going on. And I think they're relying on two things here. One is the nature of memory, public memory, and trying to appropriate and rewrite it. And the other is, of course, the sheer power of social media, speaking to a generation which is a post-Babri Masjid generation, in a way, to create a view which is at variance with reality. And I just wanted to know your thoughts on this appropriation that is going on.
Yes, indeed. And may I just say one thing before I address this question? That when I tell the story of how Nehru became the Congress president and later became first Prime Minister of India, I'm not saying necessarily that the people of India were right, that the people of India were wise, that the Congress committees were wise, that Gandhi made the right decision. I wanted to convey the facts as they occurred. I'm not saying that all these decisions were sound. It's perfectly possible that the people of India were mistaken, that Gandhi was mistaken, that Patel was mistaken when he said that the decision was right. That's perfectly possible. But I think we should, at least those of us who are willing to go for the facts, should know what the facts were. Now, this appropriation of Bhagat Singh, Netaji Subhash Bose, Baba Saheb Ambedkar, and Sardar Patel by the present ruling establishment should not surprise us. For one thing, it is a very well-deserved tribute to the great role played by these four personalities. Why wouldn't any politician want to appropriate if that were possible? And so this appropriation has indeed taken place. And my brother Gopal Krishna made a very interesting point, which I am happy to quote. Referring to Sardar Patel, he said that the disuse of Sardar Patel by the Congress party made the misuse of Sardar Patel by Narendra Modi possible. That is correct. So this appropriation takes place. And as far as, spreading inaccuracies or utter falsehoods about the past or even about the present is not, of course, confined to India. Everyone here knows how in the United States, Trump has been saying for some time that Barack Obama is not an American, that Barack Obama is a Muslim. And indeed, according to some surveys, 40% of white Americans believe this today, till today, that Barack Obama was not an American, that he became president by providing false facts about himself, and that he's not a Christian, that he's a Muslim. So this falsification of history and this falsification of facts is not confined to India, and we all know this. What do we do with this misappropriation? We can get agitated about it, but that is only one part. I think we have to somehow, all of us have to find ways of having our own antenna, of helping fellow citizens, our friends, our relatives, our neighbors, understand the facts and give them the capacity to see through falsehoods when they take place. Now, allow me to quote from what Mr. Narendra Modi said yesterday in reference to the big rally that was held in Kolkata yesterday. And this is on every news website portal that you can go to from yesterday. And he was speaking in Silvassa, which is in the Dadra Nagar Haveli part in Western India. It is connected to the Portuguese territories, of course, very much part of India. And Narendra Modi was speaking there in Silvassa at a public meeting. And he was referring to this big rally that took place yesterday here. I have prevented these men from looting public money. Consequently, they have now formed an alliance. I have prevented these men from looting public money. Consequently, they have now formed an alliance. So you all know who the people were here yesterday. 3 of them are current chief ministers, some former chief ministers, leading politicians. If Narendra Modi has indeed prevented them from looting public money, why are they still in office today? Many of them are not in office today. How could they have looted public money? So statements like these are so patently false. But we need to have the ability to spot this falsehood when we come across it. If we find our friends or associates uttering these falsehoods, we can also, if possible, correct them. Now, it's absolutely possible for some people to have such a firm opinion about a falsehood or a story that no amount of explanation will change their mind. We all know this. No amount of explanation will change their mind. Barack Obama has repeatedly tried to say who he is, where he was born. He has shown several versions of his birth certificate, small version, long version. That doesn't necessarily change people's minds. But I think we have to find the capacity in ourselves and help others around us also to find this capacity. We have to live with these false statements. And we also should recognize that while these false statements work for a while, after a while they stop working. And my own assessment after studying what is happening in India in the last 3 or 4 months only, last 3 or 4 months, is that already the people of India are beginning to think afresh, beginning to see through the inaccuracies, and that the post-truth age, which certainly was upon us, is upon the whole world, may be coming to an end in India before long, and people in India may begin to see what is correct and what is false. Sorry to give such a long answer.
No, it's very good because it helps me ask exactly what I was coming to, which is that, everyone talks about the rise of the strong men, and most of these leaders are men. Yeah. Angela Merkel is a woman and strong, but in a very positive in a different sense. I'm not including her in this. But the people I have in mind, one of whom you refer to, Donald Trump, of course, but Duterte in Philippines, Erdogan in Turkey, Putin in Russia, Xi Jinping in China, and Viktor Orban in Hungary. They are all cut from the same cloth. But if we look at their elections, in a way, Mr. Modi is one of the front runners in that pack. If you see what I mean. Because Trump was elected only in 2016 and Duterte was to 2015 and so on. So if you look at the order in which they appeared, in fact, India was the leader. So in a way, what you're saying is that India may be the place where it's changing, which is very heartwarming at one level. My question is, what brought us here? Why is it that this kind of post-truth, post-fact, fake news-oriented leadership come into power in so many countries around the same time? What is it, where is it that the truth-oriented leadership, and I'm coming to the kind of leaders you've admired in the past in a second, but what is it that, what was the vacuum in which they were able to step in?
That's a great question. It's not one that I can easily answer. Tolstoy has an amazing line, which I will not be able to quote correctly, but something like this. He wrote this incredible novel, War and Peace, which had to do with the war between France and Russia, early 19th century. And Tolstoy writes, in connection with his own novel, that it is impossible to give very clear answers to how great events in history take place, or why they take place. Why they take place. He says, if you say that the war ended because the Russian ruler, Tsar, was so powerful and so wonderful, and that is how Russia won that particular war against France, he said that would be a very simple way, and it would be like saying that a mountain was felled to the ground because a laborer applied the spade to the last, whatever, the last stroke he applied. Why this great world trend? It is a world trend. 10 or 15 years ago, everybody said the world is globalizing. World is amazingly globalizing. People are moving from one part of the world to another part. Of course, they're exporting, they're importing. People are getting to know each other. They can communicate with each other instantly. Everybody is a neighbor to everybody else on this planet. It's one village. But from globalizing, we are now tribalizing. And the whole world seems to become suddenly tribal, each one returning to their tribe. How and why these great events took place in the last 5, 6 years, as you say, 14, Modi, and 15, I don't know when, Erdogan, of course, he won in...
Erdogan was a bit earlier, yes. But he revealed his cards, and the coup was more recently, yes.
And Trump, 16. I don't think I am qualified enough, knowledgeable enough. I have my analysis enough, facts enough to say why this has happened all over the world. I think we have to wait a while to really understand and why these things have happened. But I think, I hope I'm just not being merely optimistic, but I have a feeling that in the last a few months in India, certainly, there is now a willingness not to just believe these slogans, not to believe these phrases, not to believe these claims, not to believe these charges. You know, we mentioned about Patel and Nehru and the prime ministership. Another very popular story that hundreds of millions of people believe. You may have also heard of it, but maybe it's not so. I don't know whether it's been current in Kolkata or in West Bengal, but certainly in UP and Bihar, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, there is Delhi, there is this story about Motilal Nehru. If you Google Motilal Nehru, you will come across that story. Don't you know? Motilal Nehru was a Muslim?
Yes.
Haven't you heard that? So many people have heard this. And if you go to Google, you will discover that. Motilal Nehru left Delhi, or rather his ancestors left Delhi. They were Muslims, but because the British suppressed the Muslims, particularly after the 1857 revolt, many of them left Delhi for Allahabad. Motilal Nehru's forebear went to Allahabad. He pretended to be a Hindu, but Motilal Nehru is a Muslim, Jawaharlal Nehru is a Muslim, and his daughter Indira Gandhi wanted to marry Firoz Khan, and Mahatma Gandhi entered the scene, and he adopted Firoz Khan, and he became Firoz Gandhi, and Firoz Gandhi became Gandhi's adopted son, and Indira married Firoz Khan, who was Gandhi. But this is also widely believed by many people. But despite these stories, and we need not be absolutely astonished or appalled that these stories are spread and these stories are believed. After all, human beings like to believe sensational things. And when they're unhappy, they want to believe some things about somebody that they can blame. So it's not easy, to explain why the post-truth world came into being, or why these he-men became suddenly popular in many parts of the world. And it's also not so easy to know how to counter the social media that foists these false stories on all of us. But ultimately, it's the people who themselves find the way out. And if indeed the situation in India is kind of beginning to change, the real credit must go to the people of India who know the reality around them, who know the reality of unemployment, who know the reality of debts, who know the reality of suicides, who know the reality of oppression. And a time comes when they just cannot accept these tall claims and these bombastic slogans.
What you mentioned about the Motilal Nehru story and, of course, the Obama story earlier reminded me of Colin Powell's response. When Colin Powell was, of course, the former Secretary of State and commander of US forces during the first Gulf War, and he was appalled by the attacks on Obama. And but being a Republican, and with that bipartisanship is, of course, now almost dead in America, when he was asked that, what do you think about Obama, what if he's a Muslim? And his response was, so what? And I think that's exactly the response we should have with, if Nehru were a Muslim, so what? I mean, that would be... you did mention the meeting that took place here, and you talked about the post-truth kind of leadership we have. And you mentioned the leaders who were here. Do we have reasons for hope? I mean, do we have the kind of leadership that we deserve in the right sense of the term? Or are we getting the leadership that we deserve?
I don't know most of the people who spoke yesterday. I think today's papers have statements from about 23 people. It's like 2 cricket teams assembled. And some of them have had experience. At least yesterday, they seemed to show a fair measure of unity. And they all claimed that they were going to work together to bring some kind of democracy back. I don't know how they're going to conduct themselves. I can tell you that I had the privilege of opposing the emergency in the mid-70s.
He edited Himmat, of course, for those who may not remember that, which was one of the few newspapers, magazines, and journals that very bravely opposed the emergency.
And when the people were able to outvote Indira in February of '77, and Morarji Desai emerged, and there was Charan Singh, and there was Jagjeevan Ram. These were the 3 big leaders of the government at the time. I, along with many others, tried in our little way, humble way, small way, to keep these 3 together, united. And that effort did not succeed. And in 2 years or less than 2 years, that government had to make way for, and then eventually Charan Singh became Prime Minister, and then Congress came back to power. Much later, I had the opportunity to work with VP Singh. And he came on a platform of anti-corruption, and I was captured by that platform. I also wanted the media to be absolutely independent and impartial, not be just a tool of a government. I supported him. And there was VP Singh, and there was Devilal, and there was Chandrasekhar, and these three also couldn't stay together for more than 11 months. And we know what happened thereafter. More recently, I felt when there was this great anti-corruption movement, and Arvind Kejriwal and Prashant Bhushan and Yogendra Yadav came together, and many others in the Delhi area, that we will now create a new party absolutely without corruption. We will have the Lokpal. We will have outside agencies who can investigate charges of corruption against ministers, chief ministers, prime ministers. And thousands of people gave up their jobs, closed their shops and businesses, gave their time to work for this movement in the name of opposing corruption, in the name of the Aam Aadmi Party. And what an incredible result they had, 67 MLAs out of 70, the beginning of 2015. I had the chance to meet, to be part of a national council of the Aam Aadmi Party that was discussing what we should do just after this huge victory. I was hoping that the National Committee of the Aam Aadmi Party would say, we, of course, thank the people of Delhi, and now we will see how we can give a really good government to Delhi. But the very first sentence or two that came was from some persons that accusing Prashant Bhushan and Yogendra Yadav of wanting to divide the party. And indeed, these two were expelled from the party. This was the first act after this huge victory. So, in my own longish life, short life, as I may think of it, I've seen at least 3 major disillusionments after 3 great opportunities. But still, I'm prepared still to hope that now, if there is a change, that this change may not again lead to disillusionment. And I would just say one thing. I mentioned that these 23 leaders who were there, who made some interesting statements, almost like two cricket teams or 2 football teams. Perhaps the time has come, after these strong men that you referred to, who lead country after country, that the next wave of leadership will be leadership by large teams, not by individual strong people. It may look difficult. It may not be easy to see exactly how it will happen. But I think a time may come, just as globalization has led to tribalism, and now we have these strong he figures ruling some countries. But if there is a change, it is perfectly possible that a new style of leadership will be evolved, not just at the national level, but even maybe at the state level, one hopes. I think the problems of the world are so great now, so difficult, that it is absolutely ridiculous to think that one strong, capable, intelligent Superman will resolve these problems. We have to inspire each other. We have to help each Indian to help the fellow Indian to solve problems. Leadership has to come from the people as a whole and from groups as a whole. So that is my hope as far as the rally yesterday and what form it may take, the future opposition to Mr. Narendra Modi and the BJP, that there will be some new way in which people of these different groups and different parties may learn to work together.
You talked about the nature of leadership that is needed. Before I plunge into a question related to that, I want to go back to the three people to whom you had dedicated The Last Boatman, the book on Gandhi. And all three of them, many of us have admired for a long time. And then there have been questions. One is, of course, Nelson Mandela. The other is the Dalai Lama. And the third is Aung San Suu Kyi. These were the three names you had given. Now, Mandela, there would be people who would have questions over his support of violence. There are reasons why he did justify the violence, saying he had no other choice. And once he became president, he did hold back in backing certain leaders at certain contexts and certain times. I mean, a very small example was I was a reporter in Singapore. He was traveling from South Africa, the president of South Africa, and asked him whether he would express support for Aung San Suu Kyi, who was at that time in jail. And he said, no, I don't interfere in the affairs of other countries. And I said, well, Mr. Mandela, we could have said the same 15 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago. He said that was Prisoner Mandela, this is President Mandela, and President Mandela is a prisoner of the presidential office, which was a very remarkably honest answer, but I just wanted to bring that here. The other is, of course, the Dalai Lama, who had questions about the way Nehru had run India in a recent speech, from which he walked back. Of course, the same Nehru who was exceptionally and quite rightly and morally obliged to offer hospitality to the refugees who came here. And Aung San Suu Kyi, what do we say? I mean, after the Rohingya crisis, I mean, she's clearly a very different person from what we imagined her to be at one point. So are we placing too much of respect, of honor, of expectations, and projecting our expectations of what we want on people who have a lot of good in them, to fix the problems and expecting them to be perfect when they clearly aren't?
Well, nobody is perfect and nobody can be perfect. But let's take Nelson Mandela. As you rightly point out, he used violence and he never denied it. He felt it was necessary. But it's very important also to recognize that when the change came in South Africa, after his time in prison, and when the whites also were willing to cede power and let the majority form the government, Mandela, in a very Gandhi-like approach, made it absolutely plain that the whites of South Africa would continue to have a great role in South Africa. Both the Afrikaner, the Dutch origin whites, and the British whites, and the other whites, that they would all have a role in South Africa, along with the blacks and along with the Asians. So that willingness to forget and forgive is as important a part of the Mandela legacy as the role he played in the violent movement. So we should recognize that Mandela played an incredible role there. And it was very much like Gandhi also asking the Indian people to fight the British, to oust the British, but yet, if possible, to love the British. And so that is something to recognize. And the Dalai Lama, yes, he may have made some statements about Nehru that, I mean, we all know that Nehru certainly was not perfect. But as you yourself point out, Nehru was absolutely spontaneously willing to give the Dalai Lama and the other Tibetans asylum, and the people of India supported Nehru in that. The people of India welcomed the people of Tibet and continue to do so. And so the Dalai Lama has been a very great figure for the whole world in this last 50, 60 years. You know, he is a man without a country. And he has traveled for the last 50, 60 years to many parts of the world. He has met people of all kinds. He has influenced and inspired people of all kinds. Have we heard even one story of some terrible scandal involving the Dalai Lama? Or of some kind of betrayal or some kind of wrong thing that he did anywhere? For any public figure to have survived the kind of intense scrutiny that all public figures get in this day and age, for him to reach this present age of 83 that he has reached, with his stature, his dignity, absolutely intact and if possible heightened, I think is a very great tribute to a man like him. Aung San Suu Kyi, yes, I totally share the disappointment that so many people have about her unwillingness to to really fight for the human rights of the Rohingya. We all feel this very, very deeply indeed. So human nature is like that. And yes, we recognize that she has immense difficulties. The military is still there. If she goes too far, the military may oust her. And she may say to herself, if I go, somebody else who will come in my place will be worse than I am, which is the defense that so many people offer when they do something that is not absolutely honorable. We do that at times. And I do share the great regret that many in the world have at Aung San Suu Kyi's inability to be absolutely true to her reputation and to the expectations of so many in the world.
The only other person I would include, and you do quote him in one of your, I think the same introduction, is Václav Havel, of course, of the Czech Republic, first Czechoslovakia and Czech Republic. Again, largely, had a blemishless existence. I mean, people do hold him accountable for supporting the Iraq war. That's the only thing where that people can come up with to pin him on. But otherwise, Disturbing the Peace, Living the Truth, these are the names of his books, which just shows what he really stood for and why. So, absolutely.
So another man we should think of very briefly is Badshah Khan, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan.
Yes, of course. About whom you have written, yes.
Yeah, but what a phenomenal person. What a phenomenal person, this man, who spent 12 years in British prisons, 15 years in Pakistani prisons, who wanted Hindus and Muslims to live together. He was not for partition, but then he accepted partition, as Gandhi did, as many people did, some enthusiastically, some with very deep regret. And even today, I've been to the Pakhtun country in recent years, a couple of times. The support he has, the love he has, the admiration he has from so many people. This young woman, Malala, for instance.
Yes.
She quotes Badshah Khan again and again. So we have some instances also of leaders whose reputations have survived the post-truth age.
But in that age, and this is my final quick question before we turn to the audience, is that there are some leaders who are not netas but abhinetas, who want to act like the great leaders, such as taking the train from Durban to Peter Maritzburg and getting photographed, or wearing Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's cap, or the Indian National Army cap and getting photographed. And that's the reality of the post-truth netas. And are they really abhinetas or the netas?
Well, sometimes, to become an abhineta is very useful also in politics. We know that so clearly from Tamil Nadu politics, Andhra politics, national politics. So yes, acting can be a great help. But in the end, a time does come and the people discover what is happening around them. People discover what is being said and how much truth that represents.
I think we have about 15 minutes, so I think it would be good to open up and have questions. I have some more questions, but couple of 3 or 4 requests. One is, say who you are, keep it short, let it be a question, not a comment, and if there's a follow-up question, please hold that thought, let others speak, and I'm not able to see very clearly, so I'm going to randomly say, the hand at the back first, maybe let's start at the back, and then the gentleman who just got up, yeah.
Sir, good evening. I am Virendra Singh. I am a passport from IIT Bombay.
Where are you? I want to see you.
He's over there at the back, yeah. He's waving his hand.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I see you now.
I am Virendra Singh. I have done a master's from IIT Bombay and basically a technocrat, but I have interest in history and politics and all. What I got from your 1 hour long speech is like you have addressed even pre-independence era, post-independence era, and so many changes. But you have ignored, or I don't know, the UP era. That was 1 decade of misgovernance, policy paralysis, and corruption. And that was the reason Narendra Modi has come as a Prime Minister. And at the same time, you have not given any credit to Narendra Modi for what he has done in the 3 terms as Chief Minister in last 4.5 years.
Yeah. So I suppose the question is about Manmohan Singh and the so-called accidental Prime Minister and the paradoxical Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. That's the question, yeah.
Did I defend the wonderful performance of the UPA? I did not. I did not. I still think that Manmohan Singh, in many ways, did a remarkably good job. But I agree that the UPA, the 2 terms that they had, were not as effective, as successful as they might be. I have absolutely no hesitation in saying that. But there's a very great difference, in my opinion, between the serious shortcomings of the UPA government and the present situation of the last 4 or 5 years. Now, you mentioned his 2 terms as
3 terms as the chief minister.
Chief Minister. I'm sure you don't want me to discuss the 2002 killings, which was also part of that. So his record in Gujarat is very mixed, to put it very mildly. Very mixed, and it produces some great sadness. And you know, one of the great sadnesses is, not even once has he said, I regret the killings that took place under my watch. Not once has he said, I regret the killings that took place.
He did say that if a puppy dies,
Yeah.
it's a sad thing, yeah.
Yes, he said
When
that.
you're being driven in a car, yes.
So he did say that.
Yeah.
So that is his record. But look what's happened in the last few months. Ramchandra Guha is invited to be a professor in Ahmedabad University. And he's invited to teach a course on Gandhi. Then there is great pressure put, and Ramchandra Guha is forced to give up that job, give up that appointment. So Ramchandra Guha cannot speak about Gandhi in Gandhi's Ahmedabad today. Arun Shourie is invited to speak to the National Police Academy in Hyderabad. A week or so before he is to speak, he gets a letter saying, sorry, we can't have your lecture. He can't give his lecture. This well-known great musician, T.M. Krishna from South India, he is invited to perform a great event in New Delhi under the auspices of the Airports Authority of India, I think it is. A day or 2 before the event, he is told that he cannot perform. Now, this, I'm not mentioning the lynchings and
Nayantara Sehgal.
Nayantara Sehgal in Yavatmal just the other day. She's invited to give a talk, and she's then disinvited. So when there is this atmosphere of coercion, zabardasti, of course, the killings of the Sikhs in Delhi in 84 were absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. So I'm not saying that one side has a fabulous history, but I am saying, in my experience, I had the privilege of opposing the emergency. And I don't regret that one bit. But I must say this. The emergency lasted only for 19 months. But this atmosphere of coercion and zabardasti, intimidation, has lasted for 4.5 years now. And people like me who were unhappy with the emergency felt even worse in recent years. So I'm not here to say that there has been an absolutely wonderful story for us to admire forever and ever from the Congress Party. I have never been a member of the Congress Party. I have opposed the Congress Party again and again. But I reached the conclusion that this situation where people are being pushed, dominated, bullied, and threatened, where it's not just the state, but the state and the street sometimes combined together to intimidate people, that's not the kind of society I want my children and grandchildren to face, or for me to face.
And just to add to that, I mean, he did say this earlier, and I want to repeat it, that the political choices he made tell us pretty much where he stands, whether it is the emergency, whether it is the elections after when Janata Party came to power, and his choice that he made when UPA was in power, which party did he choose to work with and be on the side of. And I think that tells a lot about what and where his political stance comes from.
Sir, my name is Priyankar De. I am a student of third year.
Out there, straight ahead, yeah.
Sir, over here.
Yeah.
Sir, my question to you that the previous day when I had an interaction when Shashi Tharoor came, he was mentioning about his paradoxical prime minister that Narendra Modi, his government, it has a inclusive shutdown, and he mentioned in a Latin phrase calling it the imperio within the imperium. But we find that Narendra Modi has been doing many sort of structural and innovative development like the Make in India. So when this coalition has been happening, and in Calcutta there has been a lot of other party members and leaders been joining into the coalition government, do we find that Rahul Gandhi to be a better candidate for the prime ministership? Because we don't find him talking about in a very logical manner about the recent events, nor we find that he does have any sort of proof. Because many a time we find that he has been not so much calculative about the recent development. So what would be your stand, Mr. Gandhi?
So I'm not saying that Rahul Gandhi should be Prime Minister of India. I'm not saying that Rahul Gandhi, if he becomes Prime Minister of India, will solve all the problems of India. But I am saying this, that what we have had in the last 3 or 4 years has been a very great setback to so many things that we deeply cherished in India, in terms of democracy, in terms of equality, in terms of freedom of speech, in terms of respecting everybody in the country, protecting life. A government's main task is to protect the weak, is to protect those who are attacked. And there, this government has failed lamentably. Can you imagine Sardar Patel, Jawaharlal Nehru, Subhash Bose, anybody like that, Gandhiji, if they had been around, and if lynchings had taken place, would they have taken so many weeks and months to deplore the lynchings? Would they have not said that this is something that we will never allow in India? That it's a great shame that this has happened? Would they have been silent when people are killed and the police then investigate the relatives of those who are killed and not those who are accused of the killing, and not a remark comes from the leader of the country? So that kind of silence in the face of very great tragedy, in the face of great cruelty, in the face of great oppression, I think to end that, yes, Rahul Gandhi is untried. The other people who are mentioned may not have had opportunities to be prime ministers of India in the past. But when people have struggled with all their weaknesses for years and years in different parts of India and different political parties, you know, these people who I mentioned, the two cricket teams, the two football teams. But, you know, for political leaders to work, survive, endure, to keep their flock together, to achieve some results, and retain the support of large numbers of people is not a small thing. Give them a chance. And supposing the Prime Minister were to say that, look, yes, so many things have gone wrong. The demonetization did not work the way I wanted. Yes, killings did take place in Gujarat. I want the support of the people of India now to do things in a different way. That I can understand. But Mr. Modi and his handful of his supporters, because most of the BJP are not speaking up for him. He has a few people who speak up for him. All they're saying is how terrible the opposition alliance is. He wants to go to the people of India for elections in 2019, not on the basis of his performance in the last 5 years, but on the basis of how terrible the opposition is.
And how terrible Nehru is.
Yes.
That's where he goes back.
Yes.
Absolutely. And the other thing I thought, you mentioned Bhagat Singh and others. I can tell you one thing. I don't think Bhagat Singh, Subhash Bose, Sardar Patel, Ambedkar, any of them would have garlanded people who are accused of lynching. Please.
राजमोहन जी नमस्कार
जी कहाँ हैं आप?
मैं यहाँ हूँ
हाँ, बोलिए.
My name is Shubhrata Chattopadhyay. I'm just a citizen. So in your book, Understanding the Muslim Mind, in the first chapter, there's an interaction where you say, Sayyid Saab, hum sharminda hai, when partition is happening, and this Muslim family has to leave Delhi, someone who worked with your father. And but from 1928 to 1947, there was a toxic atmosphere which was communal in nature. But Gandhiji and Jawaharlal Nehru, Subhash Bose, they had a bigger idea, which is why we became the nation which we did. But from 1992 onwards, when the Babri Masjid was brought down, the narrative changed. And no one has been able to give a compelling vision to the people of this country that the road you're going down is very dangerous. Because 170 million Muslims can't walk across to Pakistan. I mean, it's ridiculous. So why is no one talking about an idea? And we are picking up instances, right? But no one is talking about the big idea of what India is, which will appeal
what is
to
the idea of
What
India?
is the idea of India? I mean, if you travel in Pakistan, so do I. And Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan's later indictment of Indian leaders, and the referendum which happened in NWFP 2 months before the partition, and the referendum was lost by a very minor margin. He was very brutal about, the fact, and this would cost us. And Pakistan itself is reevaluating the road they've gone down by. So what is the big idea? Why is that not getting discussed? Because...
Thank you.
Well, that is a tremendous question. I'm very grateful that you've asked that question. And so the idea that India would become a nation not just of Hindus, although Hindus were the vast majority, but also of Muslims, of Parsis, of Jews, of Buddhists, of atheists, of communists, of everybody. It was a radical idea.
5 minutes.
And it would come together not because of some strong dictator who forces everyone to live together, but democratically. It was an idea that was not an easy one, but it was an idea embraced by millions of Indians. In more recent years, you're quite right that idea has not been sufficiently advocated, spelled out, portrayed, presented with deep conviction. And this is something that the new generation has to do. The artists, the poets, the singers, and they're doing it in their own way. We may not hear such pronouncements from Red Fort today or from other great national stages, but we hear these deep convictions from so many thousands of groups, of artistic groups, of musical groups, of women's groups, of Dalit groups, of, you know this better than I do, environmental groups. And when we say that, yes, this post-truth age has descended on the planet as a whole, and maybe the beginnings of some possibility of change from India, why shouldn't that dream be captured again? Why shouldn't that vision of India giving something new to the world be captured again? And it would be absolutely amazing when that happens, and it could happen. The idea that India is born to be the world teacher is, I think, a ridiculous idea. It is an arrogant idea. Nobody has appointed India to be Vishwa Guru, but India can be a Vishwa Bandhu, a sister or a brother to mankind. And not because we are particularly good, but because we have so much diversity, we have so much poverty, we have so much misery, we have so much oppression. But if we can address these immense challenges democratically and unitedly in India, the whole world can do something. So I'm so glad that I think perhaps what you have said is the most important thing that has been said this evening. Thank you.
There's one more question. Yes, please. Yeah. Microphone here. Yeah. I haven't heard from any woman. I don't like it. I do hope the last question will be from a woman.
Mr. Gandhi, Mr. Tripathi, good evening.
Where are you?
He's right next to the camera in the front, yeah.
Yes, okay.
I'm Prabir Gupta from the corporate world at one time, and also I was the Dean of the Management School at IIT Kharagpur, dabbling a little bit in teaching leadership. And the future of India is always something which concerns us. Picking from what you have mentioned, you said that our leadership for the future will have to be a team of people who will think alike and take it forward. But I wish to take some examples. Firstly,
Couple of them, Vig. Yeah.
no, I'll be very brief.
Yeah, thank you.
But these, I hope they'll be pertinent. Firstly, Anna Hazare was an iconic person. His case study, how he became iconic, is very well known. And he was the person who was the fatherhead of the Aam Aadmi Party, and we had a lot of hope in Arvind Kejriwal, but something went wrong with the party. Point number one. Point number two, Rajiv Gandhi, when he became Prime Minister, he hit the ground running. We had so many great modern people coming into the scene and setting things off at a very fast pace. Example, Sam Pitroda and others. And we found that there was a kickstart to whatever was happening in the modernization of India. And the third case is a sad case of Mr. Narendra Modi. Many of us know that his ideas are good. Many people say it's so good, but then we see that he's being dragged down. If we all know that he's got a group of people whom we can say are power hungry, money hungry, and Mr. Narendra Modi, it appears, has to tolerate all that because he has his agenda, other people have different agenda, but there's no comment by one on the other. If this be the case, what is the leadership that is required for India? When you said that they have to all be thinking aloud. Similarly, my contention is we have to have someone charismatic enough and strong enough who will be able to mold the country together. Thank you.
You know, India is not held together by a few leaders. Don't be under that impression, please. Even in the best of times, India is held together above all by the quality of the Indian people, the Indian citizen, the Indian housewife, the Indian worker, the Indian driver, the Indian cook, the Indian nurse. It's the people of India that keep India together. And I don't want people to think alike. They must think differently, but they must be willing to work even with those who think differently from them. And that is the new secret, that India will survive even if there are terrible leaders. And, you know, you mentioned Mr. Narendra Modi, and I will say one more thing about him. Yes, he talks about Gandhiji all the time. But he has reduced Gandhi to a man with a broom. The Gandhi with the broom is a real Gandhi. Gandhi wanted to clean up India. He wanted to remove the physical dirt of India. But he also wanted to remove the mental dirt of India. He wanted to remove the hatred and the anger and the ill will and the dislike in India. If Narendra Modi were to say that Gandhi, that was Gandhi's aim, to make all Indians care for each other, listen to each other, discover each other's pain, that is the kind of Gandhi he should have presented. He did not do that. So you're quite right that Anna Hazare came and disappointed us, or rather what happened thereafter disappointed us. And then Modi, many had very great hopes from Modi. Absolutely. He appeared to be a strong person. He appeared to be against corruption. But then he has not only disappointed us, he has in many cases frightened many people and deeply troubled many people. We will not find a magical solution immediately. But we must agree, we must decide, each one of us separately, that wherever we are, if we see something that is wrong and unacceptable, we will raise our voice and say so. If we find that the people of India, then we don't know what the elections will produce. People of India will live with whatever happens. If a dramatic change happens, that will give fresh opportunities and fresh challenges. If he comes back with a reduced majority, or if another BJP leader comes and forms a government, that is also possible. There may be a third front, not Congress-led, not BJP-led, but we don't know what will happen. But ultimately, the responsibility will be with the Indian people. And I will again repeat what I've tried to say in very unsatisfactory words, because I haven't thought these things through really, about how the solution will come for India, because that was not the topic for this. And it is not something that an 83-year-old man can discover, a solution for India like that. But surely, if our absolute unbelievable problems of unemployment and poverty and rural distress, we have to restore life in our villages. 1.3 billion people can't live in a handful of cities. These immense challenges cannot be met by a team of leaders alone. Thousands, hundreds, in fact, hundreds of thousands of Indians will have to work together. We have to evoke the best from one another. We have been so good at evoking the worst from each other. We must evoke the better angels of our nature and show the world what Indians and India are capable of.
Yes. Yes, the last question from a lady. I can't see who. Yeah.
Hello,
She's
I
standing right
volunteer
there.
myself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
No problem. Sir, I'm Malika Basu. I write cookbooks for a living, and I launched mine earlier this afternoon at AKLF. I moved from Calcutta to London 22 years ago, and I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts and views on what the younger generations, people like me, you know, who've moved away, who are disillusioned, who perhaps might come back, what role we have to play in the future of the nation. I hope that's a good question to end on.
It's a tremendous question to end on. It's a question to reflect on. And I think if every young person like yourself will think about what my role can be to create the kind of India we dream about, we want, we yearn for, that's exactly what we need. I will just make one or two observations before I conclude. My work for the last 50, 60 years in different parts of India, and my research for my history writing and my biography writing have shown me a couple of things. One, that we Indians, and I'm speaking in general terms, of course, and there are, of course, exceptions, we have opinions about one another and other groups. We don't have knowledge. We have opinions, but we don't have knowledge. Secondly, we talk more than we listen. We are fabulous talkers, but we know so little about our neighbor. Sometimes we know so little about people in our own families. We know very little about people who live close to us or far away from us. If only we Indians could learn to become real listeners to one another, that would also be a tremendous change. But these are general statements. Your question about what, especially people who have sometimes left India and gone to other places, acquired new experiences, new perspectives, they have a very great role to play. It's, you know, it's one of the most amazing things that many people of Indian origin flourish in climates other than India. The UK, the US, Canada, Australia, so many other parts of the world seem to bring the best out of the Indian character, and the Indian soil doesn't always bring the best out of the Indian character. But these are all things to reflect on. And I'm so grateful that that we are going to end this evening on this note on what each of us can do to bring about the great changes that we so desperately need and so deeply we hunger for.
I think that's a wonderful note to end on. Couple of closing thoughts is that we have started the 150th anniversary of Gandhi, and it's important and increasingly relevant and worth pondering over it that at the end, even in the post-truth age, we have to go back to some of the kind of home truths that he spoke about, which is that if you think something is wrong, think of the most needy and the most poor person, most miserable person, most vulnerable person, and see if the steps we are taking are going to help and make their lives better. That's the famous talisman that I often think of in that. Be the change that you wish to be, which is something that's on every T-shirt and from California. And whether or not he said it in the same words is less important than the message it points out. I lost a friend last week, Meera Sanyal, who was of the Aam Aadmi Party. She decided to do that. She's from the PLU generation. She was from the PLU, people like us. You know, she was a comfortable banker and spent time with Grindlazier, and she chose to step out and join the mainstream movement and become a politician at that time. And I think it's not simply in politics. The book I'm writing on Gujarat and the number of people who work with the so-called nomadic tribes, the people who work with the Dalits, I think there are immense number of reasons of hope in India. So I want to end with Brecht, which is a writer that Calcutta loves. How can it not, right? In Galileo, Andrea says, pity the nation without heroes. And Brecht said, pity the nation in need of heroes. Thank you.
On behalf of everybody here, and especially the Tollygunge Club, I would like to thank our two eminent guests tonight. It has really been an honor to have you here, Dr. Gandhi. You and Mr. Tripathi have discussed such pertinent questions at a time when our country is facing a crisis, I think, of its values and its existence. And amidst all the noise and the clamor that we get to hear every day, it has been welcome. It has been such a welcome change to hear your considered views and such from such erudite people. We are truly grateful that you chose to visit us. Thank you so much. And thank you once again to AKLF and to Maina for co-hosting this event with us. Mr. Anil Mukherjee, who's our managing member, has made a request to the two of you, if you would kindly sign a copy each of your books so that we may have them in the library. And on behalf of the library of Tollygunge Club, I would request Ms. Aisha Malik to please come and give a token of appreciation to our honored guests. Once the event is over, the authors have kindly agreed to sign some books. If you wish to buy them from the counter at the back, they will be sitting at a table near where the books are being sold and autograph them for you. And thank you very much to the audience for being here. You've been a wonderful audience. And every event actually depends on the number of people who attended, and you have helped to make this a success. Good night, and thank you.